have a son in the United States. He gave me this bear to protect me.
Vámonos! Time to go to America.
Hey, agáchate.
I promised him I would get it back to him. That's where I'm going.
So you're the writer, director, producer of this film. I mean, where did this story come from and when did it start?
It started about 8 years ago. I was traveling through Arizona with my brother, and in Tucson, the consulate invited us to give us a tour of their facilities. And in that tour, they started telling us a lot of stories about the crossing from Mexico into Arizona, which is one of the regions with the most flux into the US, you know? So I started, and all these stories are very tragic. So I started becoming very interested on this thematic. And for many years, I wanted to talk about it. I just didn't know the best approach. And that's when I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this, but through a genre movie. For two reasons. One is that, like, I wanted, if I was gonna do something that spoke about these themes, I wanted to reach a wider audience, and maybe an audience that's not normally interested in these themes and in this subject matter, you know, because at the end, Desierto, if you watch it and you don't care about the thematics in the movie, you'll still enjoy it as long as you like good horror movie thriller experiences, you know. And the other reason I wanted to tell the story through genres, because I do believe that something I really admire about genre is that it creates a visceral connection with the audience instead of a cerebral one. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about this, but in an emotional way.
Welcome to the land of the free. Find him.
And was any of this based on like maybe stories you've heard, like true stories? Or is this kind of just
Look,
fiction, in a sense?
It's all, obviously there's the phenomenon of the vigilante, the Minuteman in the border, but I've read of isolated cases of murders, but not something as big as what the character of Jeffrey does. To me, more than Jeffrey being a representation of something that exists, to me, Jeffrey represents this rhetoric of hatred that is not only in the US, it's everywhere in the world. Like in Mexico, we have it towards Central Americans. In Europe, we're seeing it one nowadays. So to me, more Jeffrey represents what vulnerable sectors of the society can end up reaching if they keep being bombarded by all this political and media discourses that like promote hatred.
Now, with this year being a political year, and then a lot of talk about immigration reform, building a wall, I mean, did you intend to have a political kind of undertone for this film?
Look, I mean, this film started because I wanted to talk about the subject matters. It started 8 years ago, and 8 years ago, I mean, I had no idea this year was gonna be like this, but already you could see in Arizona, yeah, you know, this rhetoric was here, and as I said, everywhere in the world. But I took so long to do the film. I took 8 years, a lot because of gravity and stuff. And during the shoot, Gal kept making fun of me. He kept saying like, oh, you took so long that by the time the movie comes out, it's not gonna be relevant anymore. And then what happened is that a couple months before the movie premiered in Toronto, my wife, who's from the US, showed me this video where Donald Trump was announcing his candidacy, but to the Republican contendant. And in that speech, he said incredibly racist things about Mexicans. So I was shocked. I even, since he had his shows and stuff, I even thought it was a stunt, more of a joke. But then what was scary is that other politicians acquired the same rhetoric. And, that to me is very dangerous, because when you start bringing this rhetoric up to the political class, it's like you start legitimizing those ideas to a point where then society, thinks of them as things that are okay to say and to think,
And your father's actually a producer on this film. I mean, is he kind of your go-to guy when you kind of hit a bump? Or is he somebody that you kind of turn to kind of help you out of certain situations? Or do you kind of try to stay away from him and let him be in the background?
Well, I guess in Desierto a lot, because he was so focused with gravity. I mean, besides the advices he always gives me in the writing process, creative advices that both him and my uncle the feedback they always give me. I guess during Desierto, he was very focused on gravity. So more me and my uncle set up the movie in Mexico. And obviously at various stages he gave me creative advice, but people always ask me if my dad and my uncle came to the set as producers. And I have to say I was very blessed that the Oscars happened that year that I was shooting, because they were only able to go to set 2 days, because he had the whole Oscars thing.